Hello, welcome to the latest episode of Rob, Ryan, Red, the Wrexham podcast brought to you in association with Red 10 People Development. On today's episode, are Wrexham about to smash their transfer record? Southampton tickets are finally on sale. And has Nathan Salt been missold his membership for the forthcoming season? All that and more on this week's pod.
Rob, Ryan, Red.
So, Nath, we've waited a while. The signings are flowing in. The tickets are shortly on sale as well. Wrexham are in the Championship next week. This summer has gone so quick in the end.
Yeah, well, I remember at the start of the summer, we were like, right, we need to try and figure out, can we fill the podcast every week? And this was before the Australia tour. And just, it seems like since we went on tour and I was getting scared by zoo animals, it's gone like that. And suddenly, it's funny how quick transfers can make the time go a lot quicker, Rich, when you're having fun.
And they've certainly gone up in ante as well. We'll get onto those very shortly. And of course, if you're new around here, Rob Brown Red, follow us on all the socials. Please leave a like and subscribe on YouTube as well if you're new around here. Myself and Nath will be back next week to preview that season opener against Southampton. And I believe we'll also do a separate video of our Championship predictions for the forthcoming campaign. And while we're on the subject, Nath, I believe we've got a Predictor League and fantasy football to plug as well, because I will forget about them very quickly once the season's begun.
Good shout. I might even just let you off not doing a fantasy team if you can just commit to doing the Predictor. So the Predictor League, if you want to get involved, you would just have to predict the scores of the Championship games every week. It is on Forescore. If you're watching, you can see it on the app. All the details will be in the description. The Forescore app, free to download. And our mini league code and everything is all in both descriptions, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And super easy. We've got about 30 players already signed up. There will be a trophy on the line at the end of it. You'll be the inaugural winner of that. It's good fun, and you get points based on various factors: correct score, right number of goals for the home team, away team, score margin, etc. So it'll be good to see who knows their Championship football the best. And we did do a fantasy football last year. We are doing it again. There will be a trophy for the winner. Craig Jones is the defending champion. And all our mini league code and everything is in the description below. That starts this weekend, remember. So you will be a week behind if you wait for the Championship. League 1 and 2 starts Friday night. So get your teams in now. We've already had a lot of people signing up for that. And Rich, I'm probably going to badge you for the Predictor, but I think fantasy, I'm just going to give up the ghost on that one, I think.
A lost cause, yeah. It's better to write me off before it's already begun, I think. Much like a derided signing. And speaking of signings and Nath, we won't be writing either of these two off if they are unveiled. The boys in blue, we're feeling blue. Nathan Broadhead and Conor Coady too. So you were one of those to report on the Nathan Broadhead deal this week. It sounds like, Nath, Wrexham are about to smash their transfer record, and you will soon be joined with another Nathan at the Kairos. How does that make you feel?
Upstaged by another Nathan. Quite happy with it, to be honest. Very happy with it. Nathan Broadhead scored at the racecourse already, playing for Wales. I think against Gibraltar, friendly. But look, I think that is okay. He's not the archetypal number 9, and we were hearing names Kiefer Moore and others who were more traditional in your number 9, in what Parkinson typically would go for. Even some names in Europe that we'd been told as well. And Nathan Broadhead is maybe not that typical 9. He might be a number 10, a second striker, or coming in off the left, a wide player. And I doubt it, but it does make me wonder. You've got Windass, who primarily wants to play as a number 10. You've got Broadhead, who would like to play as a number 10. Could you play those two off a striker in a kind of 3-4-2-1 or something? I don't know, but hey, look, I know we were saying Parker's not going to change his style and everything, but he's a smart manager, and if he can get players that would work in their best position, I think he would do that. So let's see. But Nathan Broadhead, yeah, I think it would be a fabulous sign. I was getting wind of it. I was texting you frantically, Rich, in one of our group chats that deal done, deal agreed about 10:30 last night, 7.5 million. Big wages on offer as part of that package. And then lo and behold, a couple of hours later, An Ipswich reporter took my info, went and checked it out with Ipswich, and the East Anglia Daily Times published a story that Wrexham were very close to sealing a move for 7.5 million for Welsh international Nathan Broadhead. I'm excited for it. What about you, though? How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, we've been longing for the days that we've got bona fide Welsh internationals playing for Wrexham again, and you've got Danny Ward, you've got Broadhead, who will both fit that next season. Uh, I think at first I was quite confused by the nature of the player we're going for, because, like you said, I think predominantly, he was part of the Ipswich team that got back-to-back promotions from League One to the Championship and then to the Premier League. Obviously, his playing time dwindled when he got to the Premier League. He rarely featured for them last season, but he was important in that rise to that level. He's definitely proven himself at Championship level. But it's similar to when we were talking about or hypothesizing Louis Barry as a signing. I think there's a bit of a similarity there where they are both best functioning off the left wing, where they like to cut inside and have a go at goal. And I think to start the season, he might not start matches. Either he could play off maybe a target man, but you could see him coming on to change games. And I also think that's an important nature of where he fits in, because I think there'll be some matches where we are quite rigid in the 3-5-2 or the 3-5-1-1. But the beauty of wing backs is that in certain games, particularly some of those home matches in the latter stages, you can effectively make it into like a 3-4-3, and you can have two proper wingers out wide. And I think that's what we could see at stages of the season where, Broadhead plays as a left winger and you kind of abandon his defensive duties. It's just, like you said, I'm just perplexed by the way the window's gone, because it reminds me of that first takeover window where we bought Sean Brisley, we bought Jake Hyde, and they looked like good players. And then you finish it buying great or excellent players. And I feel like that's kind of evolved this summer as well. I think, we've got some really good buys in, but if you compare those who've been signed at the start of the window to how we're finishing it, it's just a whole new other level. And I'm already wondering, where does Ryan Hardy fit in now? Like, that is the dilemma we've got. Never mind the players from last season. In short, I should say, yes, I'm very excited for Nathan Broadhead, but I have got no idea how we utilise him or the other summer signings.
I would be staggered if Parky got the sign off for £7.5 million.
I'm saying at the start of the season,
and he became a cameo player. I would be staggered by that.
I'm just saying at the start of the season, it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't start at Southampton, for example.
No, look, I mean, we are getting very close to Southampton. As of recording this right now, Nathan Broadhead has not been unveiled. He has not signed on the dotted line. And therefore, he's not going to be a starter at Southampton as of right now. He does not play for the football club right now, but we are led to believe that is very close. Should say Nathan Broadhead came through as a youngster at Wrexham. I say came through. He started off at Wrexham, didn't he, as a schoolboy? And there's lots of pictures of a very, very small, I might even put one on screen right now, of a very young Nathan Broadhead in his Wrexham gear. I think he was in a team with Robbie Evans at one point, and Gary Speedson, I think, was in there. What's that? About age 10, yeah, something like that, 9 or 10. And I just think it's great. But you're right, it's confusing. Very striking similarities if you're, say, Ryan Hardy, who they were eager to get in. Remember, Parky pursued him in the previous January, couldn't get it done, and then gets him in the summer. And Broadhead, they were looking at last summer, couldn't get it done, and now with the year left on his contract, looks like that's going to happen now. And there are other targets as well. It is a funny odd one. For example, this guy at Talares in Argentina, Juan Portilla, something like that, who's playing under Carlos Tevez. His future seems to be up in the air. I think there is some level of interest there from Wrexham's side. And yet, if he arrives, what would that mean for George Thomason or others that are already at the club? So I think it is really interesting where perhaps you go for moves that you do want. Don't get me wrong, every player that we've signed, Parky wants. And Sean Harvey went on the podcast and said, Phil gets the ultimate sign-off on these players. So no doubt, everyone who comes in, he's wanted, he's checked out, he's done the kind of all the background checks you would want on them. But market opportunities are something you can't really account for, because I was having a conversation with somebody that was saying that there's been no move at all for Jamie Vardy. There was never any approach made or anything like that, because Vardy wants to play in the Premier League. But they were just hypothesizing that what if that Premier League move didn't appear, and near the end of the window, his demands came down, and would Wrexham do that? Just asking me, like, do you think Wrexham would do that? And I couldn't really answer because very difficult to say, but it was just a good example of market opportunities can present themselves. And maybe with Broadhead, Ipswich didn't want to sell, but maybe they're looking at Ollie McBurney now. Maybe things were just going like, you know what? Maybe we could use that money to fund something else that we want to do. And Parky's gone, right, let's sign it off, let's get it going. Because I got that name. I just got a text of somebody that I trust implicitly that just said Nathan Broadhead. That was it. About 3 weeks ago. And I thought, surely not. That seems good money. That would cost good money. He was joint top scorer for Ipswich when they went out of the Championship into the Premier League. And I thought, surely not. And then lo and behold, that same person came back and just said, done deal. And then obviously passed it on and everything. And it turned out to be very, very accurate. So, yeah, let's see. I'm very excited. And fair play. 7.5 on Nathan Broadhead. 800,000 on Ryan Hardy, 1.2 million on Thomason, up to 4 million on Kakache, 2 million at least guaranteed up front. Lewis O'Brien, rumours of that's between 3 and 5 million. I mean, we were talking on that finance chat that they can probably afford to lose X amount, or they're going to have to spend X amount. You're looking at a £20 million window here, really.
Yes, it's crazy, isn't it? And again, you'd probably have to say, look, there's still a month of it left. Like, this is Wrexham. You never know what can happen. You mentioned those market opportunities, and even as we seem to say quite often, you look at the deal to get a Conqueror and George Evans. They were both done the last week of the window when things hadn't quite materialised. Look at the Stephen Fletcher deal. That happened after the window closed. I know we won't be going for those sort of caliber players, you wouldn't think, but you never know. And again, you mentioned Jamie Vardy. You could hypothetically sign him after the window's closed if something's not materialised. Same with someone else who you spoke about last week, Christian Eriksen. You did a story on that as well, where that's not going to happen. Phil Parkinson's revealed, earlier in the window there was a question asked, but again, Christian Eriksen wants to play at a higher level while he's still got the legs to do so just about. So that one's not going to happen. Nathan Broadhead, though, should we get an expert opinion on it? We had lots of good feedback to last week's podcast, mainly because we spoke for less time than usual on it, and we had 4 great guests. And we've got another great guest this week as well, haven't we, Nath?
Yes, Ross, who is a kind of all-round content guru, as I call him. Very nice bloke who covers Ipswich for the East Anglia Daily Times. And so I decided to pick his brains on what Wrexham are getting in Nathan Broadhead. Right, so big news of the week, and there were quite a few whispers of this recently, or a few weeks ago at least, and Ross, I'm going to introduce in a second, might have heard those whispers from me specifically, but it looks like it's gathering momentum now. Nathan Broadhead, by the time this is out, which will be Thursday morning, who knows where we'll be up to on that deal, but Nathan Broadhead closing in on a move to Wrexham. So after last week's podcast did so well getting the opposition insight, I thought I'd get Ross on, who's all-round content, Ipswich content guru, I'm going to say, at the East Anglia Daily Times. Ross, thanks for coming on. I guess the first question is, what kind of player are Wrexham getting in Nathan Broadhead?
Well, obviously a Welshman. I'm sure Wrexham fans will be happy about. Obviously came through, sort of was at Wrexham Academy before going to Everton. But yeah, he's got the X factor, Nathan Broadhead. He's sort of been part of this incredible journey that town have gone on the last few years, from back-to-back promotions from League One to the Premier League. But just a player that I've always enjoyed watching. He obviously signed back in January 2023, sort of part of that. McKenna sort of brought players in to get that extra push to get promoted out of League One. So he spent 4 years there, and Broadhead was a key player in that because he got us back up there. But yeah, the word would say X factor. It's got magic feet, and he's just a player that will get you on your feet because when he gets the ball, you just think he's going to create something out and often.
I'm sure you heard the same, but the messaging I was getting when it was first being, that name was first cropping up was that Nathan Broadhead is not for sale. There is Ipswich do not want to sell Nathan Broadhead. He is, from my mind, from what I can see, and speaking to you guys and others, mutuals that we know, a fan favourite, very popular amongst the fan base, Broady and all that, very affectionately thought of. And yet he has only got 12 months left on his contract, and at 7.5 million, I think from maybe Ipswich side, that would represent, as difficult as it is, it would represent pretty good business.
Yeah, very good business indeed. And to be fair, Mark Ashton and Co have done pretty well with a lot of their business. But yeah, we've signed him for 1.5 million back in 2023, as I mentioned. And yeah, to get triple, quadruple that is incredible business. Especially as you said, he's got 12 months left on his deal. And the thing with him, we are so well stocked in that position, so that's probably why this deal is likely going to happen. Going into the summer, you looked at, we signed Jack Clark, Jaden Philogene, Sammy Smodux, who for a good bit of money, and I'm sure McKenna's got to play them because that's a lot of money for those players, especially they were being signed from the Championship. And yeah, Broadhead obviously didn't play as many games last year as he probably hoped. He played 18 Premier League games last season, scored 2 goals. The season before that, he was joint top goal scorer for us in the Championship as we, got that practice promotion. So I am a bit shocked actually that he's going, but also not too shocked, which I'm contradicting myself there a little bit because of that position being so stocked. And I'm sure Nathan Broadhead, he's at an age now, he's 27. He wants to be playing week in, week out. Obviously, part of the Welsh national team as well. He wants to be playing. So, yeah, as you said, he's a fan's favourite. He's got a song, just can't get enough. Nathan Broadhead, and it's sad to see, but we've seen a lot of the sort of promotion heroes depart, and it's part of football.
I've got a couple of things to get onto, but one specifically that is, I guess, the head scratcher, because look, Welsh International coming to Wrexham is huge. We haven't had a lot of them over the years. I'm thinking maybe Neil Taylor, Steve Evans before that, but Nathan Broadhead in his prime years, we remember that goal against Croatia. He scored at the racecourse as well, I think in a friendly against Gibraltar, I think. The question mark and the head scratcher that I've had back since the story's come out is he's not really a number 9. Wrexham don't really play with number 10s. They don't play with wingers. I would say it's curious where you think, or where you've seen him play and where you think he fits best.
Yeah, it's interesting. I will admit, don't know much about Wrexham. Especially, last year in the Premier League, I had to get to know the Premier League teams because that was very weird for us because we hadn't been in the Premier League for 22 years. So I don't really know. I know a little bit about Wrexham because obvious reasons. But yeah, he's mainly a left sort of side, inside forward. That's mainly his role. He's versatile, like any footballer these days. He can play 10. He has played a false 9 a few times. Hasn't worked so great when we've had injuries, but he's definitely that inside left. Loves cutting in. So I can see him playing there, but you never know.
Yeah, it's curious for me whether, look, Wrexham is still interested in Kiefer Moore, and part of me wonders, it's difficult to say Phil Parkinson will change the formula that has worked so well so far, but, could he potentially play a Josh Windass and a Nathan Broadhead, both of whom would like to play as 10s, you'd imagine, off a big man? That would be formidable, you would think, at the Championship. One thing I was going to say about Broadhead was, you mentioned it previously, is it 13 goals he got firing Ipswich to the Championship? For anyone who hasn't seen him and is maybe sceptical that he is this big shiny striker that we said on the podcast last week that would be coming in, anyone that would be sceptical about his ability in the Championship, what would you say based on that season that clearly got you into the Premier League?
Obviously, he had some really good players around him as well, but then you guys have signed some really good players, so that'll help. He did struggle sort of originally in the Championship when he was here with Wigan, when he was on loan from Everton. That's, in a way, that was maybe the reason why he dropped down to League One and joined us on a permanent deal. Obviously, that was sort of a backward step for him in a way. Just been playing Championship football at Wigan. Obviously, had a good spell at Sunderland in League One, and so he was always going to make that step up to the Championship. But he had to obviously drop down to League One with us, get us promoted, and then you can sort of say that season when we got promoted, when he was joint top goal scorer with the 13 goals, as you mentioned, that's his first proper season in the Championship, and he proved he can play at that level because, 13 goals isn't too bad for the position he played. And as I said, he's got that X factor. He scored some really good goals. I'm sure you can go out there and watch the highlight reels. I know they show the good bits. They don't show the bad bits. But yeah, he can score, set pieces. There's a really good goal he scored against Sheffield Wednesday with a great free kick. 25 yards outside the box, and it was a cracking free kick, and obviously got assists to his name as well. So, yeah, as I've said it many times now, but he's got that X factor, and he'll get you on your feet.
For balance, then, two more questions. For balance, what would you say is the drawback of Nathan Broadhead? Because he hasn't established himself as a Premier League attacker, evidently, because he'd still be in the Championship. And I guess there's been some question marks around physicality. Do you agree with that? Is that the kind of area where you think he's struggling a little bit?
I would say so. He doesn't like to defend, Nathan Broadhead. Bless him. He's not. I wouldn't say. Yeah. I think obviously he's an attacker. He just wants to go and just get the ball and just go with it. And obviously, if you lose the ball, he's like, I don't really want to track back. So maybe that's the only sort of downside with him. But everything else he's up for, and I'm sure he's going to be working in the gym to get stronger. I'm sure he sort of reads that online and go, okay, I want to get stronger like that. And I'm sure a lot of players like that these days, they want to make sure to get a little bit stronger. But that's probably the only sort of bad thing about Nathan Broadhead is probably, if he loses the ball, he's not going to track back too much.
Well, look, if he's in a gym with the likes of Danny Ward, who you'll know from the Wales setup, potentially Kiefer Moore, he'll have plenty of very strong lads around him day in, day out. James McLean as well being one of them. I guess lastly then, we don't really know what to expect from Wrexham. First season back in the second tier, 43 years. Ipswich, unanimously favoured with bookmakers to go straight back up. Kept a lot of good players for now. They've still got Amari Hutchinson, have lost Liam Delap. Pushing for Hayden Hackney, which would be obviously a brilliant signing from Middlesbrough. What's the mood around Ipswich? How do you view their expectations? Again, still got Kieran McKenna. It's still a number of those players that will be top-end Championship, borderline bottom half of the Premier League type players.
Yeah, obviously when we got relegated, everyone was looking at our team. Town fans were going, we've got a Championship super team. Because of all the players we sort of signed. We sort of signed players ready for this season last year. I think we sort of deep down we thought we're going to go down, but it was always going to be tricky. You've seen the last few years, the teams that go up, they go straight back down, and we sort of recruited in that way, sort of signing the best upcoming young players from the Championship. And as you said, we lost Liam Delap. We lost Sam Morsey, who, the skipper, he's obviously gone to Kuwait, which was a life-changing move for him. So we've lost that sort of that bite in the midfield, that experience, that leader, but we've still got a great squad. And I think Town fans are not going to get too carried away. They're not going to go 100 points, 100 goals. I think we'll definitely be up there. We are favourites for a reason. So from the Town fans I spoke to for our pre-season friendly against Charlton, who we play in the Championship at Colchester, which was a weird thing. Town fans were like a mixture of like win the title, second, playoffs, that would do. So I think everyone's in a mix at the moment. I think they just want to make sure we get those signings in place because we've got a good squad, but we need to add to it as well.
So just the 99 goals and 99 points, basically. And no Nathan Broadhead, which seems to be the way it goes. Ross, appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll catch you during the rest of the season.
Oh, man.
So, Rich, he said it about 10 million times, thanks to Ross, but he said Nathan Broadhead has the X factor, which is, I don't know about you, music to my ears, although he did say that he doesn't like to defend. So I'm going to pretend I didn't really hear that part and just focus on the X factor part.
Yeah, and he's in the over 25s category as well, isn't he? He's 27 years old. He's a player in the prime of his career. He has just got that star quality that this team is maybe lacking. He's been here, he's done that. He's played for Wales. Everyone remembers that goal he scored with his first touch with the long throw. And he's just got that now, and he's also once again given us even more validity now going into the season, because I've been very skeptical. I've always said, and we'll reveal our actual predictions next week, I thought we'd finish sort of lower mid-table or sort of mid-table. That's what I thought originally. But now the momentum is really, really gathering. If you manage to get Broadhead in, maybe it is then easier to get someone like Coady in because he's seen, wow, Wrexham are giving this a go. They're not just all hubris and talking. They actually mean business now. And it also means getting into the last few weeks of the window. What if some Premier League wonder kid becomes available after their pre-season tour? Oh, we want to send them to a team not only that's going to play well, but could actually get promoted. And, that could really work in your advantage as well. So for me, it just ticks so many boxes. And again, I saw a really good tweet. I can't remember who it's from. but the money involved for the deal for Broadhead, you do sense that if one of the lower end Premier League teams or one of the recently relegated teams, that obviously isn't Ipswich, had bought or was going to buy Broadhead for sort of 7 million, 7.5 mil, people would say that's a really good deal for a player of his quality. But because it's Wrexham, it's like they are ruining football. Disney dollars are absolutely corrupting the Championship again. But we all know where the money's come from. It's all generated from our revenues, from our merchandise, from the commercial growth of the club. And I think it's a really good deal. I think he's always going to have that weight of expectation on his shoulders just because he's going to be the main guy now. You know, his transfer fee is so much bigger than anyone else at the club. It's double the previous sort of transfer record, you know, or maybe even triple almost. Is it? Like it's crazy, depending on what figure you believe. But like I said, he's got the X factor, he's got the experience to then go and back it up. And yeah, it's such an exciting time for Wrexham. And we seem to say it every week as well, Nath. This would be the signing of the takeover.
You know, it would in terms of pure finance. I still think Lewis O'Brien is like a real marker. Another contact was kind of playing down O'Brien's quality to me, and I completely rebuff that. So we'll see. I still think that's like a major landmark. And heck, the signing of the takeover so far seems to change every week. If we go and get someone out of Argentina, I think that is, you know, unbelievable. And I've also got a really funny tweet ready if we sign someone from a really far-flung place abroad. So I really hope that happens just for the tweet's sake. But yeah, you know, to go out and get a player for 7.5 million when it doesn't feel 5 minutes ago that we had that cutscene in the documentary whereby it fades to black and they just announce a load of players have been released after losing to Dagenham, where, you know, we've got Dior Angus and Sean Pearson and all those players, and you see the tears in the dressing room and Rutherford and all that. That doesn't seem 5 minutes ago to me, that, and yet it was potentially, you know, a lifetime ago, really, when you compare that to this now. So yeah, Nathan Broadhead. And I think one of the things we got back on that a lot was like, why are we signing so many attackers? We've got so many attackers. We've already signed Hardy. We're linked to Kiefer Moore. You know, now going for Broadhead. We've still got Ollie Palmer. We've still got Jay Rodriguez. Still got Mo Farl, Jack Marriott, Bickerstaff to a point. You know, we've still got all these attacking players. We said it last week, we were 30 contracted senior players. So why are we going for more strikers? But like you say, we're leveling up now. Nathan Broadhead, I know he's not an archetypal number 9, but in your forward unit, he would be, you know, your most talented player there, really, technically, I would think. And I guess before we move on, well, no, let's move on. I was going to say move on to another striker who's been in the wars, but I will save that, Rich. We'll do Conor Coady. So centre backs. A lot of people were saying that's where we need to strengthen. And I think you and I, in our predicted teams, both said we would have Max and Lewis Brunt either side of a shiny new centre-back. Now, we didn't necessarily that was a young, shiny new centre-back. We both thought experience was needed. And I wrote a story on Wednesday when we were recording this with my colleague Tom Colomosi that there is interest from Conor Coady's side and there is interest from Wrexham's side in hashing out a deal for the former Wolves and I believe Leicester as well, captain, former Premier League captain, been in and around the England setup previously as well, Conor Coady. And before I give my take on that one, Rich, what's your thoughts? Conor Coady potentially coming in to anchor a back three.
I've always been a huge fan of Conor Coady, just the leadership he's had, the way he conducts himself as a professional. He seems like a really articulate and intelligent person. He's always also done sort of a bit of punditry as well, hasn't he? He's always come across really well. And he's the type of player, I think we said right back at the summer when we sort of went through that list of free agents and stuff or deals we thought could happen. And we both said, if there's going to be one area that Wrexham go for an older player, it'll probably be centre-back because you can compensate that with the fact they're alongside Brunt and Cleworth. And Coady is that. I know there'll be Leicester fans saying, oh, he's one of their worst ever signings or whatever, and you get all this irrational hot takes in this modern world. But just look at his CV, look at what he's achieved, look at the clubs he's been at. And yes, he might not be the player he once was in that regard. What a signing he'd be. I think he'd be superb addition to the Wrexham side because it's the leadership he'd bring, the professionalism, and that experience of being there and doing it before. You know, his track record has been incredible. It's not even that long ago that he's playing for England. I think he scored against Wales in 2022 at Wembley or 2021 in one of those sort of COVID friendly matches, I think, or Nations League. I can't quite remember. I remember it being a low-key match. But he's been at the top of his profession and trade very recently. And again, in terms of the actual profile, I suppose, of player, he's not as old as some of these other players that we've been buying recently. And in these summers, what is he, 30 years old, 32? Like, that's absolutely fine. And I think he would be a great addition. And I'd even say, if you want your clickbait little headline here, Wrexham Insider, he's probably the missing piece of the jigsaw of that Wrexham starting lineup now for the start of the season, because I just think you need someone who's been there and done that as a central centre back. I think he'd be a great
he absolutely has been there, done it. And speaking to friends who are Wolves fans, they saw him step into sort of a defensive midfield role and was just spraying passes all over the place. Leicester fans are one of those here. Can't wait to get rid of him. Couldn't wait to get rid of Danny Ward. They can't wait to get rid of every player that's underperformed for them. I would say that things that work in favour for Conor Coady, close to home, probably half an hour from where he lives right now, something like under an hour. Wrexham very ambitious, as they showed with the Christian Eriksen pursuit. So I think they can offer sizable wages for Conor Coady. Interest from Conor Coady's side to be part of the project. Someone who wants to grow their media career, going to one of the most media savvy clubs out there, or one of the most focused on clubs in terms of growing your profile. Befriending Rob and Ryan wouldn't be the worst idea if you're trying to become a mainstay in the media. And he wants to win as well. And Leicester are in a state of flux. Would he be playing that much there anyway? He was linked to Rangers, so it was always likely he was going to leave. I don't know the money that it'd take in terms of any sort of fee, a nominal fee or £1 million or whatever it would take. I don't know. All I do know is that Wrexham are increasingly confident that they can get a deal over the line for Conor Coady. You saw Phil Parkinson talk the other day that they had a meeting on Monday to accelerate moves. They had a meeting. What do we need? What should we do? We've got moves A, B, C. Where do we need to start accelerating? We're back now. It's not 2 a.m. phone calls. It's not 3 a.m. email chains. It's normal hours. It's all sort of hands on deck before Southampton. Remember, we've got Groningen at the weekend. Should quickly say that friendly. I know people inside the club feel like that will be a much closer test to what they need for the Championship. And also, if you're not going out there, remember, we've already said that this is not a game for away fans, even though there might be a couple of stragglers. It will be streamed. I can confirm for a fact that it will be streamed and the details are being ironed out. So either the day this is out or on Friday, you will get details on how you can stream that game on Saturday when Wrexham play Groningen. But yeah, Conor Coady. The question I have, Rich, and it sort of relates to an email you might be able to read out, is... Let's say Conor Coady arrives. Does he immediately take the captain's armband? It seems hard to think he wouldn't wear the captain's armband.
I think the question more so there is James McLean happy to stick around and not start matches next season? Because I think that's what the reality will be once the season gets going. Like we said, I think to begin with, he should be okay in the Wrexham lineup while we're just trying to bed new players in. I do think that sometimes it's a mistake just to play an entirely new squad. I do think those first few games of the season, you see a lot more of the old guard than you expect. And then maybe by sort of September is when you have all your new signings sort of bedded in. October, November, the team looks very different. So I think to begin with, James McLean will keep the captain's armband. But it was a very good question that we had raised on our emails, robrandred@gmail.com. Please do get in contact if you've got a question for the show. Like we said, we do read every single one. It's a two-man operation in our free time. There's only so much we can do. We got this email in from Reese, and he said, "Hi lads, as I'm writing this email, Wrexham have made 7 new signings and are even more strongly rumoured to be joining the team over the coming weeks. It's looking more and more likely that our game against Southampton, we start to get a team that is mostly made up of players who could be making their debuts for the club. So my question is, who do you think the captain will be? Do you stick with McLean or do you give the armband to a new player for the season?" Personally, Nate, before you get onto it, I think it'll be similar to the Ben Tozer, Luke Young arrangement anyway. I think so long as James McLean stays at the club, he's the club captain, and then perhaps someone else is your on-the-pitch captain.
Yeah, you need your captain to play, don't you? So I wouldn't be... I think James McLean is great at setting standards, as Luke Young was in terms of on the pitch, and Ben Tozer was great on the pitch and off it as well. That makes it sound like Luke Young wasn't good off it, but you know what I mean. There was, if you weren't playing, captains can have different roles, and some people are better suited to different things. So I don't think they're going to strip James McLean of any sort of, that seems unnecessarily harsh and unnecessary. Just unnecessarily harsh, and just don't see what they would gain from doing that personally. But you would need a captain on the pitch, and I'm really curious. I remember we had a debate. If anyone's been a long time listener, we had a debate a while ago, didn't we? That you don't think a goalkeeper can be a captain. I don't think I thought a striker could be a captain. So we ruled out two ends of the pitch. Max is probably a little bit young still. So it's really good. If Conor Coady comes in, I think he would be a starting centre back and would take the armband. I would be amazed if, given his pedigree, if he wasn't the one wearing the armband. And he's so vocal. He's that archetypal leader. I know you can lead in different ways, but he's exactly, he'd have the full view of the pitch. He'd be the anchor point to the entire team, really. And if he joins, and I quickly want to throw the name Harry Suter out there. I got given that off a well-placed source recently, that he was on Wrexham's shortlist for centre-back. So as much as they're confident about Coady, it's not done by any stretch, that one. So yeah, Harry Suter, the man mountain at Leicester also now, but he was at Sheffield United. We played him when we played Sheffield United in the Carabao Cup. Want to keep an eye on that one.
So, Nathan, another hot topic of conversation has been the injury situation at Wrexham. Obviously, there'll be an update we'll bring you now on Sam Smith that Phil Parkinson has provided. But just kind of wanted to run through the injury state of play right now with the Groningen fixture this weekend. And, of course, with the Championship beginning next weekend as well of what's happened. So, Rathbone is still out. That is one just to keep an eye on. Wrexham won't be rushing him back because you just don't want to aggravate an injury at this period in time. Cannon is back on the grass training, and Farl and Smith are both back in team training, aren't they? Maybe the idea would be for some of them to get minutes this weekend. Again, it remains to be seen if that's the case. But the Sam Smith injury, Nath, have you got the Phil Parkinson quote on that to hand, or do you want me to get that?
I mean, I don't have it to hand, but I can vaguely recall the background. I think Sam Smith's been a really intriguing one because while I was away on the tour, I wouldn't say there was silence, but there were limited updates. And, when it comes to medical records and whatnot, there is a degree of confidentiality to, especially if it's serious. You want to kind of keep a lid on that, keep that under wraps. But Parkinson has now sort of gone on record to explain that Sam Smith had not one but two operations, serious operations, to remove a tumour in his leg. And firstly, before we get on to exactly what Parky said, Rich, I just would say that it's great to hear Sam Smith on the mend. He's a great footballer, but genuinely, I just wish him good health. And I'm so glad that he's come out of the other side now and it's all looking positive, because I can imagine for his teammates, his family, himself, that was a very stressful and, concerning time, I would imagine.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Wrexham fans of a certain vintage, and it's 10 years ago that Wrexham signed James Gray as part of that Gary Mills first summer, wasn't it? And, he had the tarantula bite, missed basically the first half of the season, did he mean? I know he started to begin with and had that. And again, just sort of strikes into reality that these are just normal human beings, and sometimes you can read it as, he's injured, and you think, he's like this asset, he's just this thing that exists. But it's like, think about the psychology of that, think about how it must affect him mentally, his friends and family, that these are just normal people. And I think particularly it resonates more so with those who have been with you since the lower leagues, because you've kind of seen that rise, and who knows how different the club might feel next season or the seasons to come, where they do feel a bit more alien rather than these people. So yeah, we send Sam Smith all our love, and great to see him back. And Phil Parkinson said this on him. He said, "It's been worrying for Sam. Sam had the growth removed, but then had to go back in and ended up having a biopsy that showed he had a tumour in his calf. Thankfully, it was benign and all the tumour has been removed. We've just had to take time with his recovery, as we're having 2 lots of surgery. The tissue recovery time takes longer. The good news is that he's now back in full training." So yeah, sounds awful. Having a growth in his calf removed and 2 operations this summer as well. So that's why it's been radio silent. And I suppose as well, given, all medical issues. Again, the warped thing with sports reporting is that there's like 2 sort of like legal caveats. It's like the liability will, like being libelous. Like that's kind of just disregarded in sport. You can have horrible, rash opinions and say what you want. It very often doesn't result in sort of legal action. And the other one is medical privacy. I mean, your medical issues are just put out to the world. So if he's going through that, of course, we don't need to know as fans. It just says injured. That does make sense in hindsight, doesn't it? I know in our desperate pursuit of wanting to know what's up with our players, we sometimes feel entitled to know that. But you can see why. I guess the other question I want to ask you, though, Nath, I know you've got your hand up there. Sorry, people hate me interrupting you. Do Smith and Rathbone particularly, do they when they're fully fit, do they go back into the Wrexham starting lineup?
I'll answer that first before I was going to say what I was going to say about the injury. They've probably got the best chance, I would say, of those that were in that team last season. Because I think there's no question marks that they're in the 25. We've already spoken about players we think might miss out or are at risk. I don't think Rathbone or Smith are anywhere near at risk. It is tricky, isn't it? I just would need to see what we're doing in terms of, are we playing 1 striker? Are we playing 2? Smith I still think Smith will get plenty of minutes, and the same for Rathbone. Really, I think he's such an energizer in there that him herring around the pitch, hustling people, harrying people. That's invaluable. His engine is something that was very important to us, and often, ended up in a goal when he would like chase people down, close people down. And remember that one, he closed people down, closes his man down, cuts it back for Fletcher, and Fletcher scores. I just was going to say, though, quickly about the Sam Smith tumour. It reminded me a little bit. We did a podcast many, many, many moons ago with Jordan White, who some might remember, some won't. And he had a real freak, like holiday blood issue and like blood poisoning, really. And he spoke about that. And his Wrexham career never got back on track. I know that was like really insignificant, but it was very confusing. He came with such a high, sort of lofty reputation, and he was just never the same. He had to just focus on being healthy again and not deteriorating and losing all this weight and not being able to walk and all these things. So if you haven't heard that and you want to go right back, it's not on YouTube, I don't believe. It was so early on of the podcast, one of our first sort of interviews. But if you go right back on any of the audio feeds, you'll find it. But that was a really interesting tale to sort of again underline the fact that, whatever the level, we're just employing human beings, and human beings can go through some really awful things. So yeah, Sam Smith on the mend, great to hear it. And he'll be chomping at the bit to go. He never got that chance on tour, Rich. He's seen Ryan Hardy arrive. He's about to see Nathan Broadhead arrive. There are other strikers in that mix, Jay Rodriguez and others. Sam Smith will want to say, remember me, Mr. Kung Fu. Like, I can score goals at this level. And no one's really digging him out for anything. In terms of a lot of the discourse last year was Mullins never done it in League One and need to see if he can do it. I don't think anyone's sort of saying that about Sam Smith, never seen it. But, if Nathan Broadhead comes in, having scored 13 goals the last time he was in the Championship, it's the challenge is there for Sam Smith to say, what can you do? Especially if they go and make any more moves, say with like a Kiefer Moore or someone like that. There's a lot of competition for places now, and you're going to need to hit the ground running. And I know that Smith will be chomping at the bit.
You've got me irate now that we didn't offer Jordan White a new 1-year deal after what he went through. Just to read, like Nave said, we've got that podcast in our back catalogue. He had a problem with his bloodstream. This was during pre-season. He'd only just signed for Wrexham. He was ruled out for 2 months. He ended up missing the first 4 months of the season, made his debut in late November, last day of November. He then played for Wrexham for the second half of the season. We were dreadful. This is Gary Miller's second season. He scored 7 goals, was our top goal scorer. Due to an injury crisis, he got moved to centre-back for 1 match. He had to start a game at centre-back as a striker, which I remember speaking to him after that game when I worked for his team, and he was fuming because it was so demoralising. He was one of the few saving graces that season, him and John Rooney. At the end of the season, he just got released again. And yeah, what could have been that? Again, it's the sliding doors during the lower league days of those things that went wrong. And yeah, all the best to Jordan White. I think he's at Ross County still now, but doing his best. And yeah, interesting, Nate, like you said. What will these signings mean? We're so excited for adding more players to the squad, but the ruthlessness of football means that some others will have to miss.
Okay, Rich, then maybe the last sort of segment of the week, because it's been a good one. More transfers, Coady, hopefully, Broadhead. But it's not a week, is it, without Wrexham fume and social media up in arms. And for once, I'm not the fire starter. Wrexham tickets are finally out. I firstly want to say mental it took that long. I'm sorry. The tickets are out. They're fairly priced. But other teams were selling tickets to our games long before we were selling them. So that's the first point of order. But the main bone of contention is that away tickets, they're staying as they are. But home tickets for members will no longer be a fastest finger first. It will now be a ballot system. And that has obviously split the fan base. Many that think a ballot is unfair. And, some people who didn't miss a single game last season, who are not season ticket holders, are now basically being told you're probably going to miss a good number of games because you are not going to win the ballot every single week. It's a very small number of tickets. They've lost the temporary stand at 3,000. Others saying, they've lost 3,000 seats. The ballot is the only fair way. And also, fastest finger first was, in a way, its own ballot. If you were working or you were not the most tech savvy, you missed out. You didn't get it. So is this opening the door to more people? There's also the international fans that say, well, if I'm traveling all the way from Australia or New Zealand and I'm in a ballot, is that, how does that work? Previously, they had a section cordoned off for international members. I'm not sure. Don't really think that's still the case now based on what I was reading from the ballot. Firstly, before we get on to maybe some of the actual intricacies of the ballot, Rich, what are your thoughts? Fair? Foul?
It's a very difficult one, isn't it? I think from my privileged point of view, because I'm a season ticket holder, from the outside, I'd say, well, surely a ballot is the fairest way to do it because, that is the same chance as everyone you'd like to think. You'd like to think there are going to be no workarounds for this or ways for people to exploit it. That's what you really hope to hear. But there's a real hypocrisy that is not then in place for away games. Surely, by that definition, you've got two different systems playing out. You're basically saying for home games it's not fair, but for away games it is fair. So, it's surely you're about fully one way or fully the other. In my personal opinion on that one, like I said, this is just that price of success. I think it is worth noting. I've been looking now quickly to try and have the updated numbers. When Wrexham, I can't figure out what the final figure of season tickets sold was. Do you remember after the takeover?
It's around 7,000, right? Something like that.
Yeah. So you're saying the 7,000 season ticket holders. So Wrexham's capacity next season will be what? Just under 10,000. 9,900, are we saying? Sort of?
Yeah, but even if you want to round it up to 10,000, just for easy maths.
I'm doing maths here now. 10,000 minus the 7,000 season ticket holders who are there every single game. 1,000 of that is then away allocation, is it? Or 750 or so?
1,000, yeah, 1,200, 1,000, something like that. Probably 1,000.
2,000 tickets for the ballot. And worldwide members, how many people do you think have a Wrexham membership now?
Ooh, I would say over 5,000's got to be. I would say
way more than that. I'd say
way more. 10,000? I don't know.
I should have figured this out.
20,000. All I'm saying is there's an you could buy a membership tonight.
Yeah, and I suppose this brings us on to the other aspect of it now, is that when you bought your membership, what was it what it said? What was it that the sort of the sales pitch was from the club when you bought your membership?
So I bought a £50 gold membership, which comes with what looks like a wallet, a key ring, a nice box. But on it does say, as it does for all the memberships, I should hasten to add on all the membership tiers, access to priority tickets. Obviously, no mention of a ballot. Now, access doesn't mean guarantee of purchase, I should say. But would all members, I'm skeptical whether all members would have bought a membership knowing it was a complete lottery ballot. Or would you have bought the membership at £50? I'll be honest, I didn't buy the membership at £50 thinking I was going to get any better look at tickets. You know, I didn't think that was the case. I was just curious what you would get for the most expensive membership. That was all. But and there's been a lot of contention of some people feeling like they've been missold that membership. You know, there's no reference to a lottery system ballot. You know, the ability to access every home game, which you wouldn't think would be the case again, either with a ballot. So I think it's open to interpretation. Obviously, some people are very, very angry. I guess for me, who's someone who isn't a season ticket holder, some people were taking great delight in those who are season ticket holders were taking great delight, some in members, laughing at members. Not particularly sure that's massively helpful because everyone's context is different about why they didn't buy a season ticket. I don't think it's a case of pointing and saying you're a lesser fan because you didn't buy a season ticket many moons ago for whatever reason, working Saturdays or your circumstances changed or whatever, finances, whatever the case may be. So I don't really think laughing at other fans is majorly helpful. But I do also think that if this was in place for away games, I feel like those that are pointing and laughing might have a different feeling if you realize that everyone had the same chance, all those 20,000 members or whatever it is, all had the same chance to go to Blackburn away and to all the games that you want to get to, Sheffield United away, etc. So just remember that things can change at any minute. They said that while there's no ballot for away games right now, you never know in the future if there's a massive demand and there's a small allocation, they may decide to go to a ballot. So yeah, I think for me, who's someone who's going to miss out on a lot of games based on this system, Rich, it's one of them where, am I disappointed? Sure. Of course I am. I want to watch Wrexham as much as possible. Am I surprised? Not particularly. Because the cop is disappearing. So, you know, it's short-term pain for longer-term gain. There's going to be 7,500 seats. That's been confirmed. That story from last week, the club have now confirmed that. I think even they said 7,750. I think they said as the nearly 8,000 in that stand. So there'll be those seats that go in, and hopefully that will ease, you know, congestion and demand for tickets slightly. But you know, that stand was always coming down, and tickets were always going to vanish. And that's affecting me. So I'm saying it from someone who is affected. I want to be angry. I love being angry at these things. I love moaning about these things. But I don't know. If you and I were in the hot seat, Rich, what would we meant to have done? I don't know.
Exactly. I think it's one of those where the club's in a lose-lose position. They're going to be crucified by whoever's affected by it, regardless, aren't they? But maybe the perverse thing for me to say is maybe they oversold season tickets in the first place. You know, right when they had that, they were on sale in 2022, weren't they? And like we said, maybe that was a bit short-sighted by the club because you make a lot more money off having a day-to-day fan than you do of having a season ticket holder.
But just communicate. That's just communicate clearly. That's all you need to do. That is all. Yeah. That is all you need to do because the messaging. I would say the messaging when you actually look at the FAQs on the ballot guideline, they answer a lot of questions there. It's not. I'm not thrilled reading it because it directly impacts me and it doesn't help me. But it's quite clear, I think, relatively, what's happening. The problem is it got to 10 days before the season starts and you don't have a clue if you can book your train, book your hotel, Southampton. Hull fans are already buying tickets for the cup game. You don't know what's going on there. They're introducing a dugout club as a new hospitality option for £45 a seat, a beer and a pie. These will all sell, I'm sure. I'm not sure that's £45 worth personally, but to someone else that will be worth £45 and they will buy it. But communication, that's all you.
game, people will say that's worth it.
100%. Definitely. Nowadays, when you're in a ballot, £45, people will. I no doubt they'll be sold every single game. But communicate. That's what you need to do. Communication is the key here. And I think if you communicate clearly, even if it's unpopular, like West Brom, they were putting out about Wrexham tickets, and that was deeply unpopular. But I had to credit them; they gave a very, very clear, detailed response promptly. I would say when their tickets were on sale. So yeah, there's going to be unpopular decisions. How are we funding all these things that we want to do? You want a new stand. You want Nathan Broadhead on £7.5 million and on massive wages, and you want to do all these things. And it's this 2-year plan to get to the Premier League. There's gonna be stuff along the way that grates. There's gonna be stuff that grinds our gears. Changing kits every year at massive cost. I know we got an email about Americans saying that they have no guarantee now getting a ticket as they come over as a member, and the kits are at a premium on the store and whatnot. There are going to be pinch points along the way, and I get it. I'm disappointed sometimes, but for once, which rare, Rich, for maybe me and you, I'm not gonna sound the foghorn over this one. The not handing the season tickets down really ticked me off, and I felt strongly about that. This, I sort of feel like there was an inevitability that, if you're not a season ticket holder, you are bound to miss games. It just sucks that we've risen so fast that this building work couldn't have been done when maybe the stakes weren't as high.
Yeah, and again, like you said, we can't start a podcast saying, "Oh, we really want Nathan Broadhead. We want this £7.5 million transfer record," but we don't want the funds to come in the first place. We're not happy with the way that they've been raised. So, let us know your thoughts on that in the comments below. robbrownred@gmail.com as well. Nath, also want to quickly finish. Groningen friendly this weekend. Do you use it as a dress rehearsal for Southampton? Are there any players in particular you really want to see? I guess it's the guys who weren't involved in the tour.
Yeah, I would just, I guess you kind of got to use it as a dress rehearsal, but I would just try and get as many of the new guys up to speed as I can. I'd love to see Kakache play, O'Brien, just Windass, I'd love to see play. Just get a lot of the new guys in there, and anyone with any niggle whatsoever, don't play. There's absolutely no, what you don't want is another Rathbone situation in what is a meaningless game. So yeah, if you're fully fit and you're ready to play, great. If you're not, keep your powder dry, because the one after St. Mary's will still, the youngest manager in the EFL, is it, against there was a tweet something about youngest against oldest, maybe youngest and oldest in the championship, I think it might be. That's the one that counts. So yeah, I'm intrigued to watch. I'll hopefully be able to stream it, and just hopefully we can see a bit of Kakache ball.
Yeah, we will see what happens, and maybe we'll talk about that game a bit briefly on next week's podcast. But right now, it's just time for us to say farewell. Next week, we'll be preparing for Wrexham's first game in the Championship in over 40 years. Wrexham against Southampton next week. This is really happening. Rob Ryan Red will be with you every step of the way. Nate, thank you very much, as always, for doing all the hard work behind the scenes. Thank you very much to you, wherever you are in the world as well, for listening. As always, a massive thank you to Red 10 People Development. Happy birthday, Will Sudworth. It's his actual 50th today, I think, now the podcast released. Thank you very much as well to Wrexham-based band Hypnotic for the music that stings in the show. One more week, Nate. One more week. The boys in blue, the boys in red, whatever the colour they're playing in, will be there. Thank you very much. Take care, and we'll see you again next time.
A Wrexham AFC podcast with Nathan Salt and Rich Fay.